So what have we got when we look at evidence for Robin Hood? There are a few medieval sources. Most famously, there's the Gest of Robin Hood, which is written in the 1400s. It's a sort of rhapsody of ballads. And there are two ballads that survive from the 1400s that are not part of the Gest. That's Robin Hood and the Monk and Robin Hood and the Potter. There are also medieval chroniclers. There's Andrew Winton and Walter Bower. Both of them are Scots. And the next chronicler in the 1520s, John Mayer, or John Major, he's also a Scot. That's an interesting thing. And there are a few legal records. But legal records are a bit like the archaeology of history. They only make sense when you have narratives that tell you how to make sense of them. And in some cases that can be very difficult. But there is one from 1225, or thereabouts, that describes how a Robin Hood is a runaway from justice. He's a fugitive from justice. That's an interesting one. There are other ones through the 13th century that may also be interesting. Very importantly, there's a Robin Hood who is among rebels on the Isle of Ely in 1266. So these are the medieval records. And then there are ballads that are written down later. But it's very often the case that people want to dismiss this as late evidence. But we know that there were a whole host of rhymes and ballads of Robin Hood in medieval times. And it just doesn't make sense to say that all those died and a whole new tradition began. Now, in some ways, there may be an element of truth in that, but the new tradition is very much rooted in the old tradition. Oral tradition is always conservative. And so even when it reinvents itself, it's drawing on the old in order to do that. It's not like written tradition, which very often there's an impetus on writers to say something new. If you're an anonymous oral source, you don't have to draw attention to yourself by saying something new. The point is to say something that will bear the tradition on. And that's what these ballads are doing. There are new things, but just to keep it fashionable. And so sometimes people look at the language and they say, no, this is not medieval language. Well, of course it's not medieval language. It was written for people in the 1600s. They're going to use the language of the 1600s, not the language of the 1400s or the 1300s or even the 1200s when Robin Hood probably lived. So these are the sources that we can draw on. And when you look at them all together, then it is possible to make a consistent story. Now, some people would sooner point out that you can find things that don't fit. One thing is, for instance, there's a Robin Hood who in 1225, same time as we have a runaway from justice in York, there's another Robin Hood, or Robert Hood, who has attacked a sheep pen near Woburn in Bedfordshire. Well, this isn't the same man. That's not a problem. In the 1930s, there were two men called Winston Churchill who were writing books. It doesn't mean we don't have to believe in Winston Churchill, who was the British Prime Minister, if we know that there was another Winston Churchill in America. There are two Robin Hoods. One of them is important. One of them just happens to pop up around the same time. This isn't a problem. And there are other Robin Hoods through history too. Some of them are called Robin Hood because they tell stories about Robin Hood. And some of them are called Robin or Robert Hood just because that's their family name. But it doesn't mean that there wasn't a Robert Hood or Robin Hood who was an outlaw in the 1200s, just as described by the earliest historians. And it's those early historians that we have to listen to. And if we combine what they say with what's said by oral tradition, that's when we get a story that may actually tell us who Robin Hood was. Not just a random bloke who happened to live in the forest as an outlaw, but someone who is the outlaw of legend.